Good evening and welcome to the press conference at the occasion of the initialing ceremony of the EU-Africa Caribbean Pacific Partnership Agreement. Speaking today will be both chief negotiations from the EU and the Organization of Africa, African, Caribbean and Pacific States. I welcome Mrs. Jutta Urpilainen, Commissioner for International Partnerships, and I welcome Mr. Robert Dussey, Foreign Minister for Togo, who will make statements. We will open the floor after 2 questions. So without further ado, I give you the floor, Commissioner Urpilainen.
Dear Robert, ladies and gentlemen, I am very happy to proceed today to the initialing of the new partnership agreement. The negotiations had already started in 2018 under my predecessor, but as I took office, the negotiations became one of my main responsibilities as the EU chief negotiator. I'm also proud because it is a collective achievement after intense and hard work on both sides and at all the levels. The new agreement modernizes and deepens the partnership between the EU and the 79 members of the Organization of African, Caribbean and Pacific States. Together, we are a population of around 1.5 billion people, and we represent more than half the seats at the United Nations. This agreement is a turning point that will make this relationship more political and fit for the future. It goes beyond the Cotonou Agreement in various fields. It sets clearly our vision to build together peaceful societies and a world that leaves no one behind. How? By putting human rights, gender equality, democracy and good governance at the core of our partnership. By improving people's lives with a special focus on human development. But also by fostering economic opportunities for all through sustainable growth, job creation, investments, and private sector development, and preserving the environment. All this while also addressing complex issues such as security and migration. For the first time in over 40 years of collaboration, strong regional components are included in the text. They foresee dedicated institutions that complement the institutional setting already provided in the general part of the agreement. This will lead to a further strengthening of the EU bilateral relations with each of the 3 regions, Africa, Caribbean, and the Pacific. Encompassing 1.5 billion people on 4 continents, this agreement is also a call to raise our international profile as a group. We must rally together to advance common objectives on the world scene, to act as a force for fighting climate change, to protect biodiversity, forests, and the oceans together. So in this spirit, we will all strive to the implementation, the United Nations 2030 Agenda and the Paris Agreement to overarching frameworks guiding our partnership. This new agreement recognizes also the importance of different levels in the governance process and the importance of parliaments, local authorities, the private sector, and the civil society organizations. Active engagement in partnership dialogue and cooperation processes will be key for our success. There is still a path ahead of us until the agreement can come into force. This is truly a shared success, and we can all be proud of that. So thank you, and now I pass the floor to Mr. Dussey, and we'll take your questions afterwards. Please, Robert.
Thank you. Thank you, dear Jutta. I will try to change my language. I will talk in French, in my own language, and in English if you want. Thank you, Mesdames et Messieurs.
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, you're very welcome. After 5 negotiating sessions with the chief negotiators and many exchanges between the ACP organization and the European Union at technical level, as we just heard from the Commissioner, we're very happy to be able to jointly announce that we are just about to initial a new agreement this evening. We have countries all over the world. We have ambassadors present with us who are covering the vast range of countries across the world which have taken part in these negotiations. They began 2.5 years ago, and where we met in Brussels, and here again today in Brussels we are preparing to initial this very important agreement. Well, the fact is that everything basically happened in Brussels, so we are very pleased that as we announce the successful conclusion of these negotiations, that we do so here in Brussels, that this is where we will be initiating the agreement.
Why, by no means a process without challenges, but I welcome the final outcome and congratulate all the actors whose work has led to agreement that includes a common core and 3 regional protocols. By taking into account the concern and expectation of the OACP states, the new agreement constitutes a solid basis for future reinforcing the already strong relation with the EU part. Together, we will work to address global challenges, and we will do this in close cooperation with other partners on the world stage. This partnership is, like you know, the largest global cooperation framework ever constructed of EU, 27 countries, and ACP, 79. We have recommitted the enhance our long-standing association. We have agreed on a common objective of fostering political and social economic development. We have agreed on the need to improve the social well-being of citizens in our countries and globally. Indeed, our shared goals and aspirations are for our people to live a well-balanced life in peaceful, secure, resilient, sustainable and rights-based society. The OACP is on a mission to transform the economic of its members from predominantly raw materials and single commodity exporters to export of manufactured items of higher values. Our citizens can now see the outcome of this negotiation. We owe it to them to deliver on our promise. We have an agreement that will help us to adopt sound policies that will better the lives of millions of the present and future generations. We now move to the next stage of preparation for signing and ratification, after which the hard part will begin, that of ensuring through implementation that the new agreement deliver on our aspiration. I wish to sincerely thank Madam Commissioner Jutta and her team for her leadership and vision. We had the negotiation in a cordial atmosphere, and he's enabled us to reach a good deal. I also wish to thank the OACP's Council of Ministers for the honor and trust it bestowed on me to lead this negotiation on the behalf. I was supported by a team of ministers in the Central Negotiation Group, and I take this opportunity to thank them. I should not forget to thank our ambassadorial negotiating team, as well as the OACP Secretary General, Shikoti, is here, and his staff for all this effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And now we have the time for a few questions. I welcome the journalists who are actually connecting from abroad, and please do raise your hand. You have a hand button at the bottom of the screen, and I see one question from Monica. Monica, please present yourself and your media, and welcome. You have the floor.
Thank you, and very exciting for me because this is my first EU event. So negotiating a very complex agreement like this, I'm pretty sure it's not smooth sailing. So if I could ask the chief negotiator, as far as negotiating with the Pacific, what were some of the challenges, and have those challenges been resolved?
Thank you, Monica. I think we missed the beginning of your question and your presentation, though. Could you please, I'm sorry, repeat?
And the negotiation of this complex agreement, I'm pretty sure was not all plain sailing. So my question to you, sir, Mr. Chief Negotiator, what were the challenges in negotiating with the Pacific, and have those challenges been resolved with due respect?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I will try to respond to you, Madam. I think, first one, we have to know this agreement is one of the best agreements what we have. After we started the agreement, Cotonou, we say agreement between SCP, OACP now, and the EU part. Before this, before our agreement, we had only, of course, a blending agreement. The last one was Cotonou agreement. It was only the agreement for all the part, the three regions in the world. So now we have a basic, a common, a basic agreement, and 3 protocols: Africa Protocol, Caribbean Protocol, and the Pacific Protocol. Madam, you want to know what is maybe a challenge or what is a specific of your region. I think so. I think you come from Pacific region. I think, during the negotiation, we had the African people, the Caribbean people, and the Pacific people. They try to present themselves, the specificity of each their region. In your region, for example, one of the specificities was the question about climate change. Climate change was one of the issues what we have during the discussion with your region. Your ambassador, he is here, and we say now we are. I think is good deal. It's a good deal for us, but we never know. We try to do our best about climate change, and European people with us decide together to support the climate change issue in your region. So I think if you take only the climate change like example of the negotiation, the climate change is one of the success discussion what we had with EU part. I let the floor maybe to Jutta to complete the decision from EU side.
Well, thank you, Robert. I think you explained it quite well. That one of the new elements of this post-Cotonou agreement, so the agreement we are initialing today, is exactly these regional protocols, which enabling us to really strengthen the partnership at the regional level, because all those regional protocols, they also will have they will have their own governance and their own elements. And relating to Pacific, for instance, like you said, Robert, of course, climate change is a crucial question, but also, I would say, the sustainable development of the blue economy, for instance. So there are definitely in the structure, there are new elements, for instance, this regional aspect, but also from the policy perspective, there are new elements. And I would say that if we compare this agreement, for instance, to the current Cotonou agreement, of course, now we underline and highlight the fight against climate change much more than we did in the previous Cotonou agreement. And also, we commit to implement the Paris Agreement and also the Agenda 2030, which is the common policy framework for all of us.
Monica, you have a follow-up. I will give you back the floor, but please wait a few seconds before you start speaking so that we can hear the beginning of your question.
Okay, all right.
You can go ahead.
So thank you very much for expanding on that. Of course, this comes at a time when the world is, so much has changed because of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. So if I could follow up, are there any, how does this agreement cater for economic shocks, the loss of livelihoods, particularly in the Pacific? And I would also like to say talo falava to our ambassador, Mr. Luteru Marosefua.
Thank you.
If I'm allowed to start, and then Robert can continue. If I look at the Pacific Protocol, there are, of course, several priorities in the regional protocol. For instance, as we mentioned already, this sustainable development of the blue economy and fight against climate change, but also supporting inclusive and sustainable economic growth by bolstering investment and private sector development. And I think this, of course, relates very much to the recovery of the current pandemic as well. Then there are also investing in human and social development, addressing inequalities and ensuring that nobody is left behind. Of course, when we are talking about human development and social development, we are talking about healthcare, how to really strengthening the healthcare systems, not only in Pacific, but worldwide, but also how to invest in education, which is, of course, very much linked to the job creation and economic growth as well. So I would say that it's a very broad policy framework which is within this Pacific Protocol. But I don't know if you want to add something, Robert, from your side.
It's okay. It's okay.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to Aboubakar Mounchili. Please present yourself and your media and wait a few seconds before you start speaking. Thanks. Est-ce que vous pouvez répéter, s'il vous plaît?
Could you kindly repeat the question? Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me the floor. My name is Aboubakar Mounchili. I'm a journalist working for the Paris-based news organization, and which covers countries of the African Union, African business, and other issues. I have two questions. Firstly, I would like to say to the Commissioner, in one of your interviews last year, you stated that Africa, as part of this approach with the European Union, wants a balanced partnership. And I would just like to know, from the EU's point of view, what content do you wish to give to such a balanced partnership?
No.
And as part of this more balanced partnership, what form might that take?
Je ne sais pas si ça s'est coupé ou la connexion n'était pas bonne. On peut commencer par répondre. So maybe we can answer the first question and then, in case he's connected again. Thanks.
Yes, if we look at this new agreement we are initialing today, it's very comprehensive. It's a very broad agreement. There are different policy areas part of that agreement. And I think it's also one of the differences if you compare the current Cotonou agreement to the new agreement, that it goes beyond the development point of view. I think the Cotonou agreement was mainly focusing on development aspect. And now we are talking about much more policy areas, much broader policy areas. For instance, we are talking about peace and security, we are talking about economic growth, job creation, we are talking about trade, we are talking about climate change, we are talking about human development and so forth. And I think this in a way also shows and proves our aim to really have an equal partnership with Africa, which was the question, but also with other regions, with the Caribbean and Pacific as well. So we really want to have an equal partnership, and that's our main aim and goal. Of course, we are also willing to use some funding for that partnership, and as you know, we just adopted a new financial tool for our international cooperation, for our neighborhood and development cooperation as well. The name of it is Global Europe, NDICI, and the total amount of that instrument is almost 80 billion euros. So if we look at, because the question was relating to Africa, if you look at the African part, we are going to use 29 billion euros to our partnership with African countries during the next 7 years. So I personally, I am very satisfied with the outcome of these negotiations, because I think that what we need now in the middle of the pandemic, that also when we are talking about the post-COVID time and world, we really need to have this kind of broad political framework for our partnership and cooperation, where we have a different policy areas to be part of, and I think this agreement really represents that.
Minister Dussey, would you like to add something?
Yes, je vais compléter.
Let me just add to what my friend the Commissioner has said. I would just like to say that I'm very pleased that this question came from an African journalist. We believe that this agreement will be very beneficial, and not just for Africa, because we are talking about, of course, Africa, the Caribbean and the Pacific, as we were saying earlier, and as we said together with the Commissioner. We have an African protocol, a Caribbean protocol, and a Pacific protocol. And indeed, I take pleasure in saying this, but it's true. We have to speak frankly. What we want to see in the African continent is a reciprocal agreement which mutually respects both sides. But we also have to say that there is a big difference between this agreement and the previous agreements. When it comes to the discussions, we sometimes complain, and I'm speaking here as an African, we sometimes complain about maybe a certain lack of mutual respect, and sometimes one side might feel it's in a stronger position or a weaker position, but I can assure you, with the Commissioner and with the ambassadors present here, it really is in a spirit of mutual respect, and it's psychologically very important aspect of the discussions. We really feel that we're in a close relationship and a reciprocal relationship with mutual respect. So when it comes to the Pacific, the Caribbean, and to Africa, mutual respect really was one of the key factors which made this agreement possible, the agreement that we're initiating today. And indeed, for all the issues relating to Africa, as I was saying earlier to the lady who put the question from the Pacific, these are issues which Africans themselves are putting forward. We discuss them among ourselves, among the negotiating teams, and then in turn with our European partners. And we're very important, it's very important for us on all these issues when it comes to human rights, to economic rights, and even sensitive issues. And indeed, the Commissioner is very vigilant on these matters. We try to find a good compromise, good for Africa, good for the Caribbean, good for the Pacific, and indeed for the European side as well.
And now we will take the last question, and I will try to connect with Mr. Zobillo. If he is not connected or he cannot use his mic, I will read his question that he has sent. Shall we try or no? It doesn't work. So the question is in French, he sends it. Si je n'arrive pas à me connecter.
So he sent the question in case he couldn't connect. So my question is, as regards this new partnership agreement, what will be the nature of funding for the new instrument since the EDF will no longer exist? How will it be funded?
Well, I think I already explained it in my previous answer. So yes, there is no specific financial instrument for the OACP countries anymore. As I explained, we have now adopted a new financial instrument for our neighborhood development and international cooperation funding. And the name of it is Global Europe NDICI. and the total amount of that instrument is around 80 billion euros. So through that instrument, we are going to fund our cooperation with the African countries, but also with the Pacific and the Caribbean countries. And actually now we are just in the middle of our programming exercise, where we are looking at the different policy areas, but also from the different geographic perspectives, how to allocate our funding to different regions and to different countries. What are the main priority policy areas in the certain regions and in the certain countries? And this process should be finalized by the end of this year. And this is a topic we have been discussing with Robert as well. So by the end of this year, we are able to tell all our OACP partner countries that how much funding we are able to provide in the coming 7 years to them. So this is the structure we are going to use.
So thank you very much. This brings us to the end of this press conference. I see that there is a lot of interest yet, so please do contact us bilaterally in case you have additional questions. Thank you very much, dear speakers. Thank you to all the journalists, especially those who have connected from abroad, and have a good evening. So now you will be taking pictures. Yes, but we will remove the
Otan ne paperit.